The city slept under a calm night sky, the streets glowing faintly with the dull orange of street lamps. It was the kind of night where nothing unusual seemed possible. People hurried home, bars closed early, and the air felt heavy with silence. Yet beneath this surface something had already begun to stir. Daniel, a young man who worked long shifts at a local garage, walked home with tired steps. He wasn't expecting trouble. His life was plain, ordinary, and full of routines. Fix cars, eat dinner, fall asleep, repeat. But that night, something different caught his eye. At the far corner of the street stood a girl he had never seen before. She wore a black hoodie, her hands shoved into the pockets and her head tilted low as though she didn't want to be noticed. Her frame was slender, her movements careful, and the air around her seemed heavier than the night itself. Daniel slowed his pace. Something about her felt off. He wasn't the type to involve himself in strangers' lives, but curiosity gnawed at him. The girl stood under the dim light of a flickering lamp, as if she didn't belong to the world around her. She didn't look lost, but neither did she look at ease. When Daniel stepped closer, she shifted slightly, her gaze lifting just enough for him to catch a glimpse of sharp, piercing eyes. For a moment, their eyes met. His chest tightened. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but it was a feeling he couldn't explain. Those eyes weren't normal. They reflected the light strangely, almost glowing, and carried a weight that no ordinary human gaze should hold. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, a deep vibration rolled through the ground beneath his feet. The sound grew, like distant thunder, but sharper, mechanical. Daniel glanced around, and so did the girl. She stiffened. From the far side of the street, the shadows moved. Shapes appeared. Tall, armored figures, their movements too precise, too silent, to be human. Daniel froze, confusion flooding him. Soldiers? Police? No. Their glowing helmets and metallic frames gave them away. These were not men. The girl backed into the light, her hand gripping the edge of her hood tighter, almost as if she was fighting herself. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but something inside told him not to leave. The armored figures spread out, their heavy steps echoing as they moved closer. One of them raised an arm, scanning the area with a beam of red light. The girl finally spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Stay behind me." Daniel blinked. Her tone was calm, but it carried a strength that made him hesitate. She looked small, fragile even, but the way she said those words, it wasn't a request. It was a command. The armored figures advanced, the sound of their gear humming in the night. Daniel's legs trembled, his instincts torn between obeying her and fleeing for his life. He had no idea who she was, no idea what these things were. But he knew one truth: this was no ordinary situation. Then it happened. The girl pulled back her hood. Her hair fell free, strands of bright color glowing against the night. But it was her skin that stole his breath. It shimmered in the dim light, a shade of blue that no human had ever borne. Her features sharpened, her eyes glowed brighter, and for the first time Daniel realized the truth. She wasn't human at all. The armored figures froze for a split second, as if her reveal meant something. The girl straightened, no longer hiding, and raised her hand as if preparing for a fight. Daniel's heart pounded. He had walked home expecting another ordinary night. Instead, he found himself standing on the edge of something larger, something that felt like the beginning of a war. And she, the strange girl with glowing eyes, was right at the center of it. Daniel could hardly breathe. His mind spun as the girl stood revealed in front of him. Her glowing blue skin reflected the streetlight, her strange beauty impossible to ignore. She looked young, almost his age, but carried an aura that felt ancient, like she had seen battles far beyond this small city. The armored figures closed in, their steps heavier now. One of them spoke in a metallic, distorted voice. Daniel couldn't understand the language, but the sound made his stomach twist. It was harsh, commanding, full of menace. The girl tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing as if she understood every word. Daniel took a step back. What are they? He whispered, though he doubted she would answer. They are hunters, she said softly, her gaze never leaving the advancing figures. They came for me. The words hit him like a weight. Hunters. That meant prey. That meant her. And suddenly Daniel realized he was standing too close to someone who was being hunted by things that didn't belong to Earth. One of the hunters raised a weapon, a sleek device glowing red at the tip. The girl moved fast. Faster than anything Daniel had ever seen. With a single step she pushed him aside, raising her hand as energy sparked around her palm. A blinding flash lit the night, followed by a crack that split the silence. The weapon's beam fizzled out in midair, stopped cold by the invisible force she summoned. Daniel's jaw dropped. She didn't even flinch. The hunters regrouped, spreading out to surround her. Their voices buzzed through the air like broken radio signals. Daniel could sense tension, even fear, in their movements. They weren't expecting her to reveal herself tonight. The girl glanced back at him briefly. Her voice carried urgency. You need to leave, now. But Daniel shook his head. His legs refused to move. Something inside told him that if he left, he would regret it forever. He didn't know why, but he couldn't abandon her. Another hunter lunged forward, swinging a weapon that crackled with electric energy. The girl dodged with inhuman grace, her hoodie whipping behind her as she moved. She struck the hunter's chest with her glowing hand, and a wave of energy surged through its armor. Sparks burst as the figure stumbled back, crashing against the wall. Daniel's heart thundered. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but another part of him, a stronger part, kept him rooted in place, watching, learning, realizing that this girl wasn't just surviving, she was fighting back. The remaining hunters paused as if calculating their next move. One of them turned its scanner toward Daniel. A beam of red light swept across his body. The girl reacted instantly, stepping between him and the scanner. Her voice hardened. He is not part of this. You leave him. Daniel swallowed. Not part of this? He wanted to believe her, but the way the hunters focused on him said otherwise. He had already been seen, already marked. The girl clenched her fists, energy shimmering across her skin. She looked like a living storm, contained in human form. For a moment, Daniel thought she might actually win. But then the ground trembled, again. More shapes appeared in the distance, marching out of the shadows. Reinforcements. Daniel's chest tightened. There's more of them, he whispered. The girl didn't look surprised. She sighed, almost tired, as if this was expected. There are always more. The new hunters formed a line, their glowing weapons pointed directly at her. Daniel realized then that this wasn't just a chase. This was an invasion, silent, precise, and starting right here in his city. The girl looked back at him last time. Her eyes burned bright, filled with something between sorrow and determination. Stay close to me if you want to live, she said. And just like that, the street exploded into war. The night turned into chaos. Red beams of light cut through the air, slicing into the concrete and scorching the walls. The armored hunters moved with terrifying precision, their weapons glowing brighter as they advanced. Daniel ducked instinctively, his ears ringing from the blasts. The girl stood firm, energy crackling around her like an invisible shield. Each time a beam shot toward them, it bent and shattered against the force she commanded. Sparks flew, lighting the dark street in flashes of blue and red. Daniel could hardly believe what he was seeing. She was deflecting firepower that could probably tear through steel. But even as she fought, Daniel noticed something. Each blast she blocked seemed to take a toll. Her breath grew heavier, her shoulders tensed, and the glow on her skin flickered, faintly between attacks. She was strong, yes, but not limitless. One hunter broke from the line, charging straight at them. Its mechanical limbs moved like a predator, swift and deadly. Daniel's heart jumped to his throat. The girl spun, her hand slicing through the air. A wave of blue energy exploded outward, sending the creature flying across the street. It crashed into a parked car, crushing the metal into a heap. Daniel's eyes widened. She had saved him again. Before he could process, she grabbed his arm and pulled him into motion. "Move," she ordered. They sprinted down the narrow street, the sound of heavy footsteps pounding after them. Daniel's lungs burned, his legs trembling, but adrenaline pushed him forward. Behind them, the hunters shouted in their strange tongue, their metallic voices echoing like a nightmare. They cut through an alley, the girl leading with unerring precision, as if she knew every turn. Daniel stumbled once, but she pulled him back up without slowing. Her grip was firm, almost too strong, but reassuring. For the first time, Daniel felt a strange sense of safety, even as death followed close behind. Finally, they burst out onto a quieter street lit only by the pale glow of a convenience store sign. The girl dragged him into the shadows, pressing him against the wall. She raised a finger to her lips, signaling silence. Daniel's chest heaved, sweat running down his face. He tried to whisper, but his voice cracked. Who are you?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, her glowing eyes scanned the street, watching for movement. Only when she seemed sure the hunters hadn't followed did she finally speak. "My name doesn't matter right now. What matters is that you are in danger because of me." Daniel shook his head. "Danger? I don't even know what's happening. Those things, what do they want?" Her gaze softened, though her voice stayed calm. "They want me, and anyone who stands near me becomes a target." The weight of her words hit him hard. A normal life, a normal night, gone in seconds. He wanted to argue, to demand answers, but deep down he already knew the truth. The moment she pulled back her hood, his life had changed forever. The silence was broken by a faint hum. Daniel looked up to see red lights scanning down the street, growing closer again. The hunters were relentless. The girl straightened, pulling her hood back over her glowing hair. She turned to him, her voice steady. "You can still leave. If you run now, maybe they won't chase you." Daniel stared at her. Part of him wanted to run, to pretend none of this was real. But when he looked at her face, at the strange mix of strength and loneliness in her eyes, he knew he couldn't. "I'm not leaving you," he said, his voice shaking but firm. For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. It was quick, almost hidden, but Daniel caught it. She looked away before speaking again. "Then stay close. The night is only beginning." And with that, the hum grew louder, shadows shifting as more hunters appeared at the far end of the street. The chase wasn't over. It had only just begun. The hunters' red beams cut through the misty air as they advanced, their mechanical footsteps echoing like a drumbeat. Daniel pressed himself against the wall, his heart racing, while the girl stood calmly, watching their approach with sharp eyes. She didn't look scared. She looked like she had been through this many times before. "Why are they after you?" Daniel whispered, his voice trembling. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she raised her hand, slightly blue sparks dancing at her fingertips. The hunters slowed, almost hesitating, as if her power made them think twice. Only then did she reply, "Because I escaped." Daniel frowned. Escaped from what? Her gaze flickered toward him, and for the first time, he saw something fragile in her expression. Pain. "From them," she said simply, "and from the ones who built them." Before he could ask more, the hunters opened fire. Beams of red energy tore across the street, burning into walls and concrete. The girl reacted instantly, raising a shimmering shield around herself and Daniel. The blasts bent against the barrier, lighting the night with sparks and smoke. Daniel crouched low, covering his head, but he couldn't stop staring. She stood tall, defiant, glowing like a living flame against the dark. The sheer force of her presence made him forget his fear for a moment, but he noticed something too. Her breathing grew heavier, her shield flickering at the edges. The power she wielded wasn't infinite. One of the hunters broke through, sprinting, low and fast. It leapt into the air, aiming its weapon at her chest. She turned and unleashed a burst of energy, striking it mid-air. The impact sent the machine crashing into the ground, sparks flying as it twitched violently before going still. Daniel gasped. "How are you doing this?" She didn't look at him. "I was made for it." Her words chilled him. Made for it. She wasn't just different. She wasn't here by accident. The remaining hunters regrouped, forming a semicircle. Daniel realized they weren't just trying to kill her. They were trying to corner her. The girl grabbed his arm. "We can't fight them all. We need cover." She pulled him into another alley, weaving through narrow passages like she knew every turn. The hunters followed, their voices buzzing like static. Red lights swept over the walls, searching for them. Daniel stumbled, his lungs burning. "Where are we going?" "To safety," she said firmly. "If it still exists." Her words weren't comforting, but he had no choice. He followed. Finally, they burst into a hidden courtyard, surrounded by crumbling walls and shadows. The girl stopped, scanning the area, her eyes glowing faintly. Daniel bent over, gasping for breath, sweat dripping down his face. "You need to tell me the truth," he panted. "What are you?" For a long moment she didn't answer. Her gaze drifted toward the stars above, barely visible through the haze. Then softly she spoke. "I'm not from here. I came because I thought Earth was safe. But I was wrong." Daniel froze. The words hit him like a hammer. Not from here. She was admitting it now, fully. An alien standing in front of him, hunted by machines that weren't of this world either. Before he could process, a shadow moved at the edge of the courtyard. A hunter stepped forward, weapon raised. Then another, and another. They had found them. The girl's jaw tightened. She raised her glowing hand again, but Daniel could see the strain in her body. Her energy was running out. The hunters closed in slowly, their weapons aimed, confident now. Daniel's fear peaked. He knew she couldn't keep fighting forever, and if she fell, he would die too. But then, something unexpected happened. The ground shook violently, a low rumble spreading through the city. The hunters hesitated, their glowing eyes shifting. From the sky above, a deep roar thundered, as if the heavens themselves were splitting open. The girl's eyes widened. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. "They've found me," she whispered. The rumble grew louder, shaking loose bits of stone from the courtyard walls. Daniel looked up, his heart pounding. Through the clouds, a massive shadow loomed, its lights cutting across the sky like the eyes of a predator. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't anything human. The shape was vast, triangular, and bristling with strange glowing lines. As it hovered, the very air seemed to hum, pressing down on everything below. Daniel's knees went weak. "What is that?" The girl's expression hardened. "Their ship. The hunters don't work alone, they always have a command watching from above." The hunters in the courtyard straightened, their glowing helmets flashing as if receiving orders. Slowly they stepped back, forming a wall instead of charging. They weren't retreating. They were waiting. Daniel turned to the girl, panic clawing at him. "We can't fight that. We need to hide." She shook her head. "There is nowhere to hide. Not anymore." Before he could argue, a column of red light shot down from the ship, hitting the far side of the city. The explosion lit the horizon, a wave of fire rising into the night. Daniel's ears rang as the shockwave rattled the courtyard, knocking him against the wall. He stared in horror. They're attacking the city." The girl grabbed his shoulders firmly. "Listen to me. This is not a war against your people. It is a war against me. They will burn everything just to find me." Daniel's chest tightened. His mind screamed at him to run, to hide, but his gut told him something else. If she was right, running wouldn't save anyone. The hunters stepped aside, suddenly making way as a new figure descended from above. Unlike the others, this one's armor was sleeker, darker, lined with gold. Its presence radiated authority. Daniel instinctively knew. This was their leader. The girl tensed, her glowing hands rising. For the first time, Daniel saw hesitation in her movements. She knew this one was different. The leader's voice boomed, deep and commanding, though the language was still alien. The girl responded in the same tongue, her voice sharp, defiant. The exchange was quick, heated. Daniel couldn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. They knew each other. Finally, the leader gestured. 2 hunters raised their weapons toward Daniel. He froze. His stomach dropped. Why are they pointing at me? The girl stepped in front of him instantly, her voice fierce. Because they know you saw me, and now they won't let you live. Daniel's blood ran cold. He hadn't asked for this. He wasn't part of her war. Yet here he was, marked for death because he had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The leader advanced slowly, weapon glowing. The girl raised her hand, summoning another burst of blue energy, though Daniel could see the strain tearing at her. Her glow flickered weakly, her knees trembling under the pressure. Daniel realized with horror, she couldn't hold them off forever. And then something unexpected surged inside him. A fire, a stubbornness he didn't know he had. Maybe it was madness, maybe it was courage, but in that moment he couldn't just stand and watch her fall. He grabbed a loose metal pipe from the rubble and stepped forward. His hands shook, his throat dry, but his voice came out steady. If you want her, you'll have to get through me too. The girl spun toward him, her eyes widening in shock. No, you can't. But it was too late. The hunters paused, surprised by his defiance. For a moment, silence hung in the air, broken only by the hum of the hovering ship. The leader tilted its head, almost amused, then raised its weapon. Daniel braced himself, pipe clutched in white-knuckled fists. The girl's glow flared, brighter than ever before. She stepped beside him, her voice steady and low. Then we fight together. The courtyard erupted with light. The courtyard exploded in chaos. Red beams tore across the air, smashing into walls and shattering stone. Daniel swung the metal pipe blindly, adrenaline flooding his veins while the alien girl raised her glowing hands, unleashing waves of energy that lit up the night. The hunters advanced in perfect formation, their movements sharp and mechanical. One lunged at Daniel, its weapon buzzing with deadly light. Instinct took over. Daniel ducked and swung the pipe with all his strength. The metal rang out as it struck the creature's helmet, knocking it off balance. Sparks flew and Daniel stumbled back, shocked that he had even landed a hit. The girl moved like lightning, finishing the job. A surge of blue energy burst from her palm, sending the staggering hunter crashing to the ground in a smoking heap. She glanced at Daniel quickly, her expression fierce. Stay alive. Daniel's chest burned, but he nodded. He had no training, no weapons worth anything, but for some reason he couldn't let himself give up. Not while she was still fighting. Hunters pressed harder, forcing them toward the crumbling walls of the courtyard. Daniel swung again, blocking a strike that rattled his arms to the bone. The girl deflected another blast, but her shield flickered dangerously. She was strong, but exhaustion was clear in her trembling stance. The leader stepped forward at last, towering over the others. Its weapon glowed brighter than the rest, pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel froze as it raised the device, aiming straight at the girl. She didn't flinch. Instead, she planted her feet, her glow flaring. She shouted something in her language, her voice ringing with defiance. The leader responded in the same harsh tongue, almost mocking. Then the weapon fired. The beam struck her shield with a thunderous crack. For a heartbeat, Daniel thought she had stopped it. But the barrier shattered like glass, throwing her backward into the dirt. She let out a cry of pain, her glow dimming. Daniel's blood ran cold. He rushed to her side, dropping the pipe. Hey, get up, you can't stop now. Her breathing was ragged, her skin pale beneath its glow. Yet even in pain, she pushed herself up on one elbow, her eyes blazing with stubborn fire. I will not let them take me. The leader raised its weapon, again preparing to finish her. Daniel's instincts screamed. Without thinking, he threw himself in front of her, arms spread wide. He had no shield, no power, nothing but his body. The leader hesitated. Its weapon hummed, but it didn't fire. For the first time, the hunters seemed confused. The girl's eyes widened as she realized. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "They don't understand. Why would a human protect me?" Daniel's legs shook, but he stood firm. "Because you're not alone." Something shifted in the air. The hunters faltered, their glowing helmets tilting as if uncertain. The leader lowered its weapon slightly, processing the scene. The girl slowly rose to her feet, her glow flickering, but returning stronger now. She stepped beside Daniel, placing a hand on his shoulder. Energy crackled where her touch met him, spreading like fire through his veins. Daniel gasped, his body surging with warmth. His skin shimmered faintly, his muscles burning with a strength he had never known. He staggered, looking at her in shock. What did you do to me?" Her voice was soft but steady. "I shared my power. You wanted to stand with me. Now you can." The hunters reacted instantly, raising their weapons again. But this time, Daniel didn't feel helpless. He clenched his fists, and blue sparks flickered across his skin, mirroring hers. The leader growled, stepping forward. Daniel looked at the girl, his fear replaced with something fierce. "Then let's finish this." Together they charged. The courtyard shook with violence as Daniel and the girl charged together. Blue energy crackled from her hands while faint sparks flickered across Daniel's skin. He could feel the strange power coursing through him, heavy and burning, but it gave him speed and strength he had never known. One of the hunters leapt forward, weapon raised. Daniel swung his pipe with a force that startled even him. The impact shattered the weapon's barrel, sending fragments flying as the hunter collapsed. He gasped, almost disbelieving, but the girl's sharp voice pulled him back. "Don't stop." She blasted 2 more hunters with a sweeping arc of light, knocking them into the walls. Their armored bodies sparked and twitched, smoke rising where her power burned through their systems. Daniel followed her lead, his movements clumsy but driven by raw determination. For the first time, the hunters looked unsettled. Their formation broke as they tried to regroup, their glowing helmets shifting nervously. The leader barked orders, in its guttural tongue, forcing them forward again. Daniel and the girl fought side by side, a strange but powerful rhythm forming between them. She struck with precision, each burst of energy controlled, while Daniel used brute strength, swinging wildly but effectively. Together they pushed the hunters back, step by step. But Daniel could feel it. The power she had shared with him was burning him from the inside. His chest ached, his arms trembled, and every breath came ragged. It wasn't his power, and his body struggled to hold it. The girl noticed. She pressed a hand to his arm, steadying him. Her voice was low, almost gentle despite the chaos. "Don't push too far. You are human. This energy, it can destroy you." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Then why give it to me?" Her eyes locked on his, glowing bright. "Because you chose to stand with me when you had nothing. That makes you stronger than they can understand." Her words lit something inside him, a fire that burned hotter than the pain. He nodded, gripping the pipe tighter. The leader finally stepped into the fight. Its armor gleamed under the red light of the hovering ship, and its weapon pulsed with a deep, throbbing glow. With a roar that rattled the walls, it struck. The blast was faster, stronger than anything before. The girl threw up her shield, but the impact sent both her and Daniel flying back. They hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from their lungs. Daniel coughed, forcing himself up through the pain. The girl staggered beside him, blood trickling at the corner of her lip, her glow weaker than ever. The hunters closed in again, their confidence returning. Daniel's vision blurred, his arms barely lifting the pipe. The leader aimed its weapon for the final strike. Then something unexpected happened. A loud crack split the night as a figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the courtyard. A man, dressed in dark tactical gear, carrying a rifle unlike anything Daniel had seen. He fired, and a beam of blue light tore through one of the hunters, dropping it instantly. More figures appeared behind him, soldiers, but not ordinary ones. Their weapons glowed with the same strange energy as the girl's power. They moved with precision, unleashing coordinated fire that cut into the hunters. Daniel stared in disbelief. "Who are they?" The girl's eyes widened. Relief and fear mixed in her face. "They are not yours. They are mine." The soldiers fought with brutal efficiency, driving the hunters back. The leader roared in fury, rallying its forces, but for the first time, the balance of the fight shifted. Daniel looked at her, realization dawning. "You weren't alone here, were you?" Her gaze dropped, her voice soft but heavy. "No, I was never alone. But whether they came to save me, or to take me back, I don't know." The courtyard blazed with light as two armies clashed, and Daniel finally understood. This wasn't just about her. This was about a war far bigger than Earth itself. The courtyard became a battlefield. Blue beams from the new soldiers streaked through the air, colliding with the red blasts of the hunters. Sparks and fire lit the night, the ground trembling, under the clash of two alien forces. Daniel pressed against the wall, gripping the pipe with shaking hands, his body screaming from exhaustion. He glanced at the girl who stood tense, her glowing eyes fixed on the newcomers. She wasn't relieved. She was wary. The man in tactical gear advanced, his steps confident, his rifle glowing with alien light. When he finally spoke, his words came in the same language as hers. His voice was sharp, commanding. The girl stiffened, her jaw tightening. She replied quickly, her tone defiant. Daniel couldn't understand, but the exchange sounded like an argument, one filled with anger and mistrust. Finally, the man's gaze fell on Daniel. His voice dropped, colder now. He said something that made the girl instantly step in front of him, her hands raised protectively. Daniel swallowed hard. "What's he saying?" Her voice was low, heavy with tension. "He says you should not be here, that humans are fragile, that you will only get in the way." Daniel's chest tightened, but before he could respond, the man barked another command. The soldiers around him pressed forward, cutting through the last of the hunters with ruthless efficiency. The leader fought savagely, but even it struggled against their combined fire. With a final blast, it staggered back, armor sparking, and disappeared into the shadows. The ship above rumbled, pulling higher into the clouds as if retreating for now. The hunters melted away with it, leaving behind only scorched stone and broken machines. Silence fell at last, heavy and uneasy. Daniel's breath came ragged, his pipe slipping from his grip. He stared at the soldiers who stood in perfect formation, their glowing weapons still aimed at nothing. They weren't celebrating. They weren't relieved. They were waiting. The man in tactical gear stepped closer, his cold eyes locked on the girl. His words cut through the air again, sharper than before. The girl shook her head firmly. "No, I will not go back." Daniel blinked. "Go back? Back where?" She turned slightly toward him, her expression softening. "My world. My people. I escaped them once. If they take me again, I will never be free." Daniel's mind spun. She wasn't just running from the hunters. She was running from her own kind. The man's voice boomed again, and this time she flinched. For all her strength, all her fire, his words carried authority that shook her. Daniel stepped forward instinctively, planting himself beside her. "She's not going anywhere. If she doesn't want to." The man's eyes narrowed at him. He muttered something Daniel couldn't understand, then raised his rifle slightly as if considering whether to use it. The girl hissed a warning in her tongue, her glow flaring bright enough to make the soldiers pause. Her defiance sent ripples through the air. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the man lowered his rifle and gestured sharply. The soldiers pulled back, but their weapons stayed ready. His voice grew colder, quieter. The girl translated softly, her voice trembling. "He says we have until dawn. After that, they will take me by force." Daniel's stomach sank. "And what happens to me?" Her eyes dropped. "If they see you as a threat, you will not survive." The weight of her words hung heavy in the night. The soldiers melted into the shadows, leaving the courtyard scorched and silent once again. Daniel, turned to her, his voice raw. "Why are you running from your own people? What are you hiding?" She looked away, her glowing eyes dimmer now, filled with sorrow. "Because they made me into a weapon, and I will not be one anymore." The city was quiet again, but it was not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the silence after a storm, broken buildings, scorched walls, and a sky that still glowed faintly red where the ship had fired. Daniel and the girl walked through the ruins, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. He was exhausted, every muscle aching, but his mind wouldn't stop turning. The words she had spoken, weapon, escape, hunted by her own people, looped endlessly in his head. Finally, he asked, the question that had been burning inside him, "What did they do to you?" The girl walked a few steps more before answering. Her hood was back up, hiding most of her glowing features, but her voice carried the weight of memory. "They took children like me, taught us nothing of kindness, only war. They built us into soldiers, shaped us into weapons to fight their enemies. I was one of the strongest, too strong, and one day, I refused to fight." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He looked at her, young, beautiful, fierce, yet scarred by a life stolen from her. "So you ran?" "Yes," she whispered. "I came to this planet because I thought I could disappear here. Be ordinary, even if only for a little while. But they found me. They always do." Daniel stopped walking, forcing her to face him. "You don't have to face them alone anymore. You're not a weapon. Not to me." Her glowing eyes softened, and for the first time, her voice trembled. "You don't understand. At dawn, they will come again. And if they cannot take me alive, they will destroy me." The words sank into him like ice. Destroy her. Not capture. Not spare. His chest ached at the thought. Before he could respond, the ground rumbled again, though softer this time. The hunters had not returned. Not yet. But dawn was only hours away. They found shelter in an abandoned subway station. Broken benches lined the walls and flickering lights buzzed overhead. Daniel slumped onto a bench, his body finally giving in to the exhaustion. She stood nearby, quiet, lost in thought. After a long silence, he spoke again. "Why did you save me back there when you could have run?" Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "Because you looked at me differently. Not like a weapon, not like prey, but like a person. No one has done that before." The words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He felt his chest tighten with something more than fear, more than survival. For the first time since this nightmare began, he realized how deeply he cared whether she lived or died. The night passed slowly. Daniel drifted in and out of uneasy sleep, haunted by visions of the hunters and the ship above. When he woke again, faint light was filtering through the cracks of the station entrance. Dawn was near. The girl stood at the doorway, her hood down, now, her glowing hair catching the pale light. She looked both fragile and unbreakable, like someone ready to face her fate. Daniel rose, his legs weak but steady. "So this is it," she nodded. "They will come for me. If you stay close, you will die. If you leave, you might live." Daniel stepped forward, shaking his head. "No, I already made my choice. Whatever happens, I'm with you." For a moment, she just stared at him. Then, slowly, a faint smile touched her lips. Sad, but real. Then we faced dawn together. Above the city, the ship rumbled again, its shadow blotting out the morning sun. The hunters began to descend once more, their glowing red eyes piercing the mist. The final battle was coming. The sky burned with light as the ship descended lower, blotting out the dawn. Its shadow stretched across the ruined streets, swallowing everything in red glow. The hunters marched in formation, their mechanical steps echoing like drums of war. At their front stood the commander, its black and gold armor gleaming in the rising sun. Daniel and the girl emerged from the subway station side by side. She no longer hid beneath her hood. Her glowing hair flowed free, her eyes blazing like Twin stars. She looked like what she truly was. Not human, not ordinary, but something greater. Daniel gripped the metal pipe in his hand, though he knew it was useless against what loomed before them. Still, he held it tight. He wasn't leaving. Her not now, not ever. The commander raised its weapon and the hunters spread wide, forming a circle. The girl stood tall, her voice ringing out in their harsh tongue. Daniel didn't understand the words, but he felt the meaning. Defiance, rejection, freedom. The commander's response was brutal. It fired. The blast streaked toward them like a spear of red fire. The girl raised her hand, summoning a shield, but her strength faltered under the sheer force. The barrier cracked, energy sparking violently. Daniel didn't think. He threw himself against her, bracing his body against the wave. Pain tore through him as the beam hit, but instead of death, blue energy flared from his skin. The power she had shared with him ignited fully, forming a second shield that fused with hers. Together they stopped the strike. The commander stepped back, its weapon humming angrily. The hunters closed in, opening fire. Daniel roared, swinging his pipe as energy surged through him, each strike landing harder than steel. The girl unleashed wave after wave of light, her attacks sharper, fiercer, fueled not just by survival but by something deeper. The battlefield lit with blue and red, a storm of sparks and fire. Hunters fell one by one, their armor cracking under the combined fury of human will and alien power. Daniel moved with reckless courage, his body screaming but refusing to stop. The girl fought like a force of nature, her glow brighter than ever, before finally only the commander remained. It advanced slowly, weapon raised, its red eyes fixed on her. The girl's glow flickered. She was nearly spent. Daniel staggered forward, raising his broken pipe like a sword. The commander swung its weapon, but Daniel blocked it with sheer will, the blue energy around him flaring wildly. Sparks exploded, the impact rattling his bones. He screamed through, the pain refusing to fall. The girl stepped forward, placing her glowing hand on his back. Her power surged into him, flooding his veins, merging their strength. Together they struck, Daniel with his last desperate swing, and the girl with a blinding burst of light. The commander's armor shattered. The blast tore through it, sending it crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks. Its weapon fell silent. The ship above roared in anger, beams of light scanning the battlefield. But then, slowly, it began to rise, pulling back into the clouds. Without its commander, the hunt was broken. The remaining hunters melted away, vanishing into shadow. Silence fell once more. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping, the last sparks fading from his skin. The girl knelt beside him, her glowing hand resting gently on his shoulder. For the first time her expression softened, filled with warmth. "You should not have survived that," she whispered. Daniel gave a weak smile. "Guess I'm tougher than I look." For a moment, neither spoke. The city lay broken around them, but dawn finally broke free from the clouds, washing the streets in golden light. The girl looked at him, her eyes shimmering. "You changed everything tonight. For me, for them, for yourself." Daniel met her gaze, his chest aching but full of something new. Not just survival, but hope. "Then maybe, you're not the only one who's not ordinary." She smiled, faint but real, and together they rose, standing against the dawn. The war wasn't over, but they weren't alone anymore.